Hey folks, Sealer here, and welcome to my review of the brand new premium Tier 5 U.S. Navy battleship, the USS Oklahoma. She's being released in Update 0910 as part of the second part of the U.S. Navy battleship event. She is the final reward for completing the Always Courageous collection. As is the case with all of my reviews, I'll have an index for the video in the description below, so if you want to jump around to any particular sections, feel free to do that. I'll have a game, and I'll actually spend a fair amount of time talking about the gameplay in this match. I'll then go to port, talk about her specifications, my build, some options that you may want to consider in your build, and then offer some final thoughts. So the Oklahoma, she is a Nevada-class battleship. She is part of the class of battleships called standard battleships per the U.S. Navy, and that means she is slow. And when I say slow, I mean really slow. Her base speed is a whopping 19.7 knots, and even with a Sierra Mike speed signal, she can only get that up to 20.7 knots. So patience is the name of the game with this ship. And to compound things, her reload is 40 seconds. Now she fires 10 356 millimeter guns. They have excellent range. I do mount the artillery plotting room 1 upgrade in slot 3 to increase the range by 16%. And that gets her range out to 19.9 kilometers, which is very good, and that's before a spotter plane. Her accuracy is generally pretty good, but because the reload is so long, aiming is super critical. And in fact, you can see here with just the first couple of salvos, my results were not really very good. Part of that is the range that I'm trying to hit these relatively maneuverable targets at, these 2 Omahas. Part of that is probably RNG, and part of that is also aiming. So you can see here I'm trying to be very careful about what I shoot at. So with such a long reload, it's very important to get the aiming right, and it's also very important to make good target choices. There I do finally land a decent hit with a Citadel and take out most of the remaining health of one of those Omahas. Now, as is the case with the standard battleships, because they are so slow, it is super important to be aware of what's going on and realize early enough if you need to start retreating, which is the case here, because what's happened is one of my cruisers, the Danae, basically marched straight into Charlie and died. I think he may have been a bot. There are 3 bots per team. And then my 2 other cruisers that were on this flank, the Montecuccoli and the Emile Berton, have basically abandoned the south side and left me effectively alone. So I have to retreat. Because I can't compete with 4 ships simultaneously. The Karlsruhe has not been spotted, that was on the northeast side of Bravo for a little while. So I'm mainly just going to focus on sailing away here. Even if I take down these 2 Omahas, that's going to leave me up against a Congo, which is way faster than I am and has a faster reload. And I basically could not compete with a ship like that one-on-one in those circumstances. Thankfully, I do take down one of the Omahas with my back turrets, with my front turrets, front guns. I am going to finish off the other Omaha, and that evens up the ship count for our team. So far I've done okay in terms of damage. I'm up to almost 35,000 in damage, but I still have to sail away here and basically try to regroup with most of my allies that are in the north, because again, I don't think that I can compete with a Congo one-on-one, and especially since I don't know where the Karlsruhe is, and the Karlsruhe carries torpedoes, I don't want to put myself in a crossfire. Now, one thing that's actually kind of helping me in this game is the fact that our Emile Berton went CV hunting, which is not something that I normally endorse. In fact, I strongly reject by and large. But when you're dealing with Tier 4 carriers, it's easier to do. The maps are smaller. The Emile Breton is a very good ship. She's very quick. So she can, get herself into that position on this relatively small map. Here's an example, again, of me not correctly aiming. That Congo is not traveling very fast, and I gave him way too much lead, so now I have to wait another, almost 40 seconds. I've got adrenaline rush, obviously, kicking in a little bit, but I have to wait basically another 40 seconds to try to get another salvo on her. I am going to take a little more chip damage, but nothing too bad. But so the Emile Breton is sort of in the mix here with the two aircraft carriers. In fact, I'm surprised he hasn't taken one down. Okay, so one has just gone down actually to rockets from our Hermes. But the fact that the two carriers are being occupied by the Emile Breton means that I don't have to be dealing with carrier drops because I'm completely isolated. I'm very slow. My AA is not that good, and when I go to port and talk about specifications, I'll talk through her AA and how she compares with some of her peers. So to some extent, I'm kind of being saved here in terms of being focused by carriers because our Emile has been so active in keeping them, occupied, or keeping the carriers occupied on the Emile Breton. We lose our Svetlana up at Alpha. He was actually a bot. He was right in the middle of things, trying to help things out. Thankfully, our Montecuccoli finally gets into Bravo to try to take that cap. Right now, all I'm trying to do is try to get resets on the Congo. I know that the Congo right now is not trying to pursue me directly, so I can slow here a little bit, although slow is a relative term. I'm at half speed. I'm still below 10 knots. Avoid this salvo or most of it. One nice characteristic of the Oklahoma, and this is the case for I think most, if not all, of the U.S. Navy standard battleships, is that they tend to have very good maneuverability. They may be very slow, but their rudders are pretty quick and their turning circles are spectacularly small. So her turning circle is only 610 meters, which, is actually better than some destroyers and many cruisers. So she's quite nimble from that perspective. I did get a reset there on the Congo. Don't know if I'm going to get another reset here before I get behind this island. It doesn't look like it. So I'm going to, accelerate, but that's a relative term. I'm going to try to speed up here and get on the other side of this island so I can get another reset. Thankfully, our carriers are doing a job trying to focus on the Congo as well to try to keep the cap reset, which is definitely helping as well. We do capture Bravo. We did lose our Emile Breton, who went after the carriers, but both of the opposing carriers have now been taken out. The Congo is turning in, so I'm not expecting to get much in the way of damage here, but at least if I can get a shell on him and get a reset, that will help. Yes, I will. All right, so now I'm going to advance the replay by about a minute because I don't want you guys to, keep watching me sail up this west channel. Now, normally I don't like going up these side channels, especially as a battleship, and especially as a slow battleship, because it takes you out of the game for a while. But again, I don't want to put myself in a crossfire moving into Bravo like our Texas has. So you can see our Texas that's on the west side of Bravo. He's in a crossfire between one of the New Yorks that I'm firing on, the Karlsruhe, and the Congo. And that's exactly where I don't want to be. And as a slow battleship, that's the type of situation that you simply can't get yourself out of. And again, part of the reason I'm spending so much time on talking about the gameplay in this particular review is because getting success out of these very slow battleships requires a lot of patience and a lot of awareness of your positioning so that you don't put yourself in, it's very easy to put yourself, I should say, in vulnerable positions that you simply cannot get out of. And you have to be able to predict earlier when you need to start moving and get away from dangerous situations because you simply don't have the speed to escape once you realize that it might be too late. All right, so now I'm going to come back and I'm going to try to get a reset on this Karlsruhe, trying to predict which way he's going to end up committing himself here. I also am trying to not allow the Congo to fire on me because he has my broadside, and I want to avoid taking a big salvo from him if I can. And it looks like the Karlsruhe is going to position himself so I can't get a good shot on him. He's turned in. You can tell I'm sort of trying to predict, is he going to turn back out? But I realize he's not, so I'm going to fire on the Congo here because he's presenting a lot more side to me. I'm going to take a little bit of chip damage. I'm going to deliver a lot more damage to him. Unfortunately, we didn't see the number pop up there because of the zoom mechanics with a spotter playing it. So I apologize for that. But that was 8 penetrating hits, which did, I think, pretty close to 20,000 in damage. I want to maintain 6 kilometers or better from the Karlsruhe to stay out of his torpedo range. Thankfully, the island, I've got the island between me and the Congo, plus I'm bow on, so he isn't going to be able to do too much damage to me if he fires on me. Get a salvo out on the Karlsruhe, double Citadel, and take him out of the match. So now I'm up to 92,000 in damage. We have a very slim lead, but it's not going to last for very long because the opponents have 2 caps. And after we get this Congo down, I'm going to want to turn into Bravo so that I can help our team get a cap. So wow, in fact, the Congo, her engine is out. And I'm sort of vacillating here on when I turn out because I want to try to get all my guns on her and take her out as soon as I can. Take a little more chip damage, not too much. Fire up into the superstructure and into the casemate area. I get a really nice hit, almost 15,000 in damage. She's burning, and the torpedoes are going to come in and finish her off. And that has given us the lead again. But again, it's a very slim lead. And I need to turn in and start heading toward Bravo. And again, with this very slow speed, it's still going to take me a while to get there. And the opponents have already regained the lead on points, thanks to them having 2 caps. In fact, you can see one of our, I think it's a dead ally, is typing in the chat that we should be go to B. And yes, I'm fully aware of that. I'll get there as soon as I can. Thankfully, our Montecuccoli has done a good job staying alive as a cruiser. I should also note here that this match is working to my benefit because I'm top tier. So let me talk a little bit about my experience with this ship when I was not top tier. So when I played in games where I was up against tier 6 ships, I found I did okay. As long as the maps weren't too big, like if I were playing on New Dawn or Ring or something like that, generally things worked out okay. The range definitely works to your advantage, and there's still enough, quote, slow battleships, even at tier 6, that you can play pretty well. Once you hit tier 7 games, this ship is going to honestly quite struggle. You generally are going to want to stay in the middle, because the maps, especially if you get into a bigger map like Estuary or what's another good example, or Neighbors or something like that, you simply can't get out to a flank, or if you do, you'll never make it back to any other position because the maps are just too big. So you kind of have to sit in the middle and use your range, and hopefully some good aiming, and with some RNG, you can do some decent damage. And that's not too uncommon, again, with these standard battleships because they're just so slow. And it's also a key reason that the Colorado is so strongly disliked, is that being at tier 7 and even seeing tier 9 ships and tier 9 maps, she has a very difficult time getting into positions where she can be effective. Now, I am going to get this cap here before these shells land, so that was good. I take a big hit from the New York. I think he got in through my forward athwart ship and got into the Citadel, or at least he got a lot of penetrating hits. Now, the Oklahoma is supposed to have somewhat buffed secondaries, and I am going to actually land a fair number of secondaries. I've already set a fire with them. And I'm not entirely sure at the time that I'm preparing this review what the final base range will be on the secondaries. I think when I played this game, they were at 4.5 kilometers range, but I think they may end up being longer in the final form. I don't quite remember. But we're down to this one opponent, and after we sink her, I'll go to port and we will have won this game. Okay, here we are in the Hawaii port with the Oklahoma. Starting with our armor layout, she is pretty typically armored. for a Tier 5 battleship. She has 19mm extremities, which means she's going to be overmatched by all battleship AP calibers in the game, including the 305mm guns. Well, in fact, that probably reflects the damage I took late in the game against that New York. I do think that he got in through my bowing in through the casemate or the Citadel athwartship to get a Citadel on me. But that's pretty typical for Tier 5 battleships. Casemate area is 19mm, superstructure is 13. The turrets are pretty well armored. In fact, the frontal plates are 457, which is very good. Now, her Citadel is, or at least on paper, looks very well protected. It's very low in the water. There's even a little bit of a slope turtle back here. I never got into a drive-by situation with her in any of the games I played. So I don't know how she would do in a drive-by engagement, but at least based on what I see here, she probably would do pretty well. All right, in terms of defending herself, I should say, in terms of avoiding Citadel hits. Survivability, 48,200 hit points. The torpedo protection is mediocre at 18%, but the hit points are pretty typical for a Tier 5 battleship. Guns I talked about, she fires 10 356mm rounds, and they have a reload of 40 seconds. Again, I talked about that during the gameplay. The range is very good with the artillery plotting room. One upgrade in slot 3, and again, I'll get to my upgrades here shortly, gets the base range out to 19.9 kilometers, so she has very good range if you mount that upgrade. The turrets, the base rotation is 60 seconds. I do have John Doe, which has a buffed expert marksman skill that brings it down to 45. The AP shell alpha is 10,000, and the HE alpha is actually quite good at 4,900 with a solid base fire chance of 27%. So those main caliber guns are quite good. The Sigma is 1.8, which is not spectacular, which would be like 2.0, but it's also not very bad. I mean, you'll see a lot of battleships with 1.7, 1.6 at this tier, so that the guns are reasonably accurate. Now, one thing I did check, the secondary range here on the ship as I was testing it was 4.5. It says 4.7 here because I think I've got no, I don't have any signals on here right now. Oh, I know what it is. It's the artillery plotting room increases the secondary battery range by 5%. But I have confirmed that the ship, as she will be released in 0910, her base secondary range will be 5.5. So she will get an extra kilometer on her secondary battery range. All right, AA, I talked a little bit about. It's not that good. Obviously, it's terrible in overall. I mean, compared to like a Minotaur, but for Tier 5 battleships, it's kind of middle of the road. The range at 4.8 kilometers is pretty typical for a Tier 5 battleship. The continuous damage is 99. That's, again, somewhere in the middle. There's some battleships like the Julia Cesare and the Oktyabrska Revolucja, which have much better AA. Texas, obviously, is kind of the pinnacle for Tier 5 battleships. But then other battleships, especially like the Congo classes, will tend to be poor AA. So she probably won't shoot down too many planes. She'll do okay against Tier 4 aircraft. Tier 6, she probably would struggle quite strongly against. All right, maneuverability I talked about at length. She is just dreadfully slow. And that's just something you have to expect with these standard battleships. Base speed is 19.7 knots. You can get that up to 20.7 with a Sierra Mike signal. Where her maneuverability is good is she has decent rudder shift at 13.4. That does, well, you can't improve the rudder shift. There are no upgrade slots to do that with a Tier 5 ship. But the turning circle is spectacular at 610 meters. So she can make some pretty tight turns. for a ship of this class. And then her concealment's also quite good. So best concealment with camouflage and the concealment expert upgrade, or commander skill, excuse me, is 11.8 kilometers. And when you have a almost 20-kilometer firing range, that's a pretty big margin between your maximum firing range and your detection. So that's definitely quite playable. All right, let's get to my upgrades. So only 3 upgrade slots: main armaments modification 1 in slot 1. Take the damage control system modification 1 in slot 2 to reduce the chance of flood and fires. And then I do recommend the artillery plotting room modification 1 upgrade in slot 3. This is unique to U.S. Navy battleships. It increases their main battery firing range by 16%. It also increases the secondary battery range by 5% and reduces the dispersion on the secondary battery guns. Some people may be very tempted to take the main battery modification 2 upgrade. To improve the turret rotation. It's a quality of life thing, but given how slow the ship already is, and you have to be sort of very patient and be thinking ahead considerably to make sure that you understand your positioning, where you need your guns and where your ship should be and all that. I would generally not recommend taking this. I would recommend getting the better range because especially if you're going to get up-tiered against tier 6 and tier 7 ships, which have better range, you're going to want to be able to compete against them better by having better range. And if you don't have that extra 16% range, you're going to struggle even more when you are up-tiered. All right, consumables, standard complement here. You have damage control, repair party, and then you can, and then the only choice here for the plane is spotter. You cannot mount a fighter. But the spotting aircraft gets you an extra 20%, which means that puts you out to almost 24 kilometers. Although, frankly, I don't know that I would reliably hit things at 24 kilometers with this ship, but having the spotter aircraft definitely helps in terms of shooting at targets that are on the other side of terrain, like that one case that I was firing on the New York that was positioned behind an island. All right, next is my commander skills. So this is John Doe from my Montana. I did talk about this build in a previous video for the Florida and the change that it made. So traditionally, the tank concealment builds for battleships involve superintendent, basics of survivability, fire prevention, and concealment expert. And then I would normally take adrenaline rush, expert marksman, and then priority target. Now, in this modified build, I dropped basics of survivability, picked up jack of all trades, and picked up expert loader. I find expert loader is very useful for some of these battleships like the Florida, where your caliber, the caliber of your shells may struggle against upper tier, better armored targets, especially when they're angled, and being able to more rapidly switch to other munition types, between AP and HE can be very useful. And then taking the jack of all trades reduces the cooldown on your consumables, including damage control, and that offsets some but not all of the impact of the increased fire duration because you're not taking basics of survivability. So I think I've found that this is generally a reasonable trade-off to pick up these couple of skills, the jack of all trades and the expert loader, and not take basics of survivability. The fire prevention is immeasurably valuable for a tank build because it not only reduces the number of fires that you can have on your ship, but it also reduces the chance of having fires at all by 10%, which is significant. All right, so that is my build. Let me get to signals real quickly. Standard complement here, I would take a November Foxtrot to reduce the cooldown on your consumables. Sierra Mike gets you a little more speed. Maybe you don't take this because it's only an extra knot. That's up to you. I would definitely take the next 3, which is India Delta, to recover more health when you do use the repair party. Juliet Yankee Botus 2 to reduce the duration of floods. India Yankee to reduce the duration of fires. And then lastly, Juliet Charlie. If you were really hell-bent and you wanted to go for more secondary range, I suppose you could take Mike Yankee Soxa 6, but I wouldn't bother on a ship like this. That's just kind of my opinion. Okay, so those would be the signals I would take. All right, so some final thoughts on the Oklahoma. I played quite a few games with her, and for me, I found her reasonably playable. I really liked her range. I liked aspects that I could position. As long as I thought ahead and thought about my positioning, I could make her work. But I will fully admit she is not going to be for everybody. In fact, there's probably only a minority of players that actually enjoy playing the standard U.S. Navy or the U.S. Navy standard battleships because their speed is very slow, and having good situational awareness and thinking ahead is even higher demand on you when you're playing ships like this. And most players prefer to have ships that give them better flexibility with the speed, and I can certainly understand why. However, if you do enjoy the U.S. Navy standard battleship playstyle, I think you would quite like the Oklahoma. The longer reload is something to get used to. However, with reasonably accurate guns and very long-range guns, you can make it work. You just need to make very good choices in your target selection, and you need to aim well. And then by and large, I think you can do okay with this ship. So that is going to conclude my review of the Oklahoma. Feel free to leave me your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, we hope to see you out there on the virtual seas, and we wish you happy sailing.